Hello and welcome to Lemire Reviews, where we bring you the stories you may not yet have heard of. My name is Ross Lemieux, and today we are bringing you part 5 of Once and Future. We are 1/6 of the way through our series, a series built on Arthurian mythology and zombie horror. The story has taken a turn into the family versus family, one side trying to stop the other from unleashing the Fey world and doing irreparable damage to the real one. This damage coming in the form of binding the two worlds together, the real world and the one made up of the stories. Let's dive into our 5th installment of Once and Future.
On this issue's cover, we have Galahad, or the man who is playing the part in the comic's living story, and the sword in his hands reflecting what he desires most, the Holy Grail. The color scheme is a combination of blue and gold. The comic is distributed by Boom Studios and created by Kieran Gillen, Dan Mora, and Tamara Bonavillin. The comic was released November 20th, 2019, in November. Let's open up this book and dive into the main story. Duncan's grandfather lay dead on the floor, a self-inflicted wound having done him in. Done to stop the rest of them from following Galahad to the Grail, and now the time for secrets to be revealed has arrived. She starts off by telling him they had hoped it ended in '88 with their last hunt, hoping that since they were the last to know about it, the stories would end with their passing. But they needed a back door, just in case, a way to get to a Grail if things ended up going wrong, and thus they created a Percival. Thus Duncan was raised by a woman, hidden away from the world, knowing nothing of knightly things. Duncan tries to shrug off the embarrassment and find out where it all went wrong. And in the beginning, she says, everyone was on the same page, until one day the grandfather wanted to bring it all back, a way of giving Mary a future, Mary being Elaine's real name, before she changed it to Reza Galahad. When he suggested bringing the Fey world back is when Bridget shot him, but he had already been filling his daughter's head with ideas, and she ran away, and Bridget couldn't find her, which is around the time she had Galahad. Duncan starts to realize he is being set up as just another weapon for her to use. But Bridget assures him the hope was he would never have to deal with the stories, that she only wanted the best life he could have, trying to justify her actions by telling him how much danger the islands are in. Then Bridget suddenly pivots the conversation, trying to get Duncan to say she is the only family he has ever known. But all Duncan can think about is his sense of betrayal. So again she asks if she was like a father to him, and he finally admits, yes, she was. That's why the betrayal hurts so much. And with that, Gran shoots herself in the chest, mortally wounding herself, and in doing so opens a way back to the Grail Castle. She recreated the way by taking on the role of the Fisher King. While Gran is only worried about the country's safety, Duncan is freaking out that Gran is bleeding out. But she tells him if he takes the Grail from Galahad, it can heal her. She hands him a letter and sends him on his way. Her and Rose have an exchange, Rose accusing Brigitte of still using Duncan. The letter is instructions on the perils of the castle, the first being the sleeping dragon he must sneak past. The second is a room and a bed that shoots you full of arrows if you sleep in it. The third is a woman trapped in a cauldron that he must not free. Passing by all these trials unharmed, Duncan makes his way down a hall to find a group of ghosts carrying multiple objects. And at the back, a woman holding the Grail. Standing in front of them all is Galahad, who asks them just one question. Who does the Grail serve? It says something to Galahad, and then Galahad ushers them to continue. But before he can grab the Grail, Duncan raises his gun and tells Galahad to turn around. He refuses to shoot, and that's when the knight that was with Galahad before appears behind Duncan and attacks him. The Grail bearer asks the zombie who he stands with, and it gives the obvious answer. He came with Galahad. But Galahad knows that to be the wrong answer, for Gawain in the stories doesn't accompany Galahad. And that's when, with the power of the Grail, green bolts of energy rip through the knight, lifting him into the air and ripping the knight to shreds. Since the knight was playing the part of Gawain, he he was meant to say he traveled with Percival and Galahad, and that's what cost him his life. Duncan, recovering his gun, raises it at Galahad, demanding he hand over the Grail. But Galahad talks Duncan into putting down the gun and fighting like a real knight would. Having put down the gun, Duncan raises his hands, ready for a fight. So Galahad pulls a sword, saying that what it means to be a knight today is to win. Duncan, trying to reason with him, tells him he is being lied to and manipulated, but all Galahad wants is to be the hero of the lies of the story, and that Duncan is just in his way, a footnote in Galahad's story. When Duncan realizes that the man is crazy. Realizing that Galahad is in fact off his rocker, Duncan ends up hitting him hard enough in the jaw to draw blood and knock Galahad down. Taking this opportunity, Duncan grabs the Grail and makes a run for it, making it all the way back to the door and to the room with the wounded and bleeding Brigitte, with Rose still watching over her. But as soon as Duncan crosses over from the Fey world into the real one and enters that room, the Grail turns into green smoke and vanishes. It appears Grant had told one last white lie. Because the Grail is part of the other place, it cannot cross over, and while that stops Arthur and Galahad, now that both the Fisher King and the Grail are gone, they will need to find a different way to obtain their goal. Duncan doesn't care about any of this, and is trying to think of a way to solve the problem at hand, and has Rose drive them to the bathhouses. Getting to the baths, Rose unlocks the doors and lets them in. They make their way inside. Duncan lays out his plan to go to Arthur and get his healing belt from him. Brigitte thinks the plan is suicide. He is aware of how dangerous it is and isn't going in unarmed. Being a man of pure heart and on a worthy quest, Duncan ignores Brigitte's protests and kneels at the water, calling out to the ladies of the lake, and they answer his call. 3 hands emerge out of the water, one hand holding a sword by its blade, covered in blood, exclaiming, "Excalibur is yours."
And there we have part 5 of our story. Gran mortally wounded, the Grail gone, and Duncan planning to face down Arthur to get the belt of healing, and to do it all, he had to claim Excalibur. Not a lot of extra lore to add in. We've already talked about the Grail, Excalibur, the healing scabbard, all that stuff. So I guess all we have to do now is thank everyone for tuning in. I hope you join us next time. Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know down below. Thank you very much.